I know they do.
Order! Order in the bloody court! Mr. Steves, I accept you're here on official business, but you have to keep your trap shut until I tell you can speak. Continuous contempt of court will end you up in the jail cell. And the guard will be the one that has to watch over you, meaning that both of you will miss the case. We wouldn't want that now, would we? Anyway, Mr. Doom Guy is accused of killing a nun, believing that she was a demon. This is what the police report says. Mr. Doom Guy, how do you plead to these heinous crimes of which you are accused?
It couldn't be possible for me to kill a nun since I've been trapped in hell for multiple eons, since the very first age, killing demons.
So, Mr. Doom Guy, in plain English, the answer is innocent or guilty, not your life bloody story.
What kind of nun was it? Was it the movie nun?
Mr. Bird, this is not the time for you to be asking questions. This is the charge and the pleas. I will explain shortly. Don't fret, just let him do his job. And if he's not intelligent enough to say fucking innocent, then you can say it for him. Mr. Doom Guy, your plea, please.
It's not like he doesn't have to
Innocent.
Innocent, very well. We have heard a plea of innocent from Mr. Doom Guy then. Therefore, we shall be proceeding onwards with a standard trial. We will not be using a jury in this case as we do not have enough jury members, and I don't think you can sit enough people up here to do a jury. As I said, Mr. Nomad will be the prosecuting lawyer and Mr. Bird will be the defense lawyer. We have Mr. Steves, who is a witness to the case. However, I will brief him at a later point as to what his witness statement is. And Mr. Barr of Soap, referred to as Mr. Barr from this point on, is the court guard. Mr. Barr, I'm going to ask you to escort the accused to the jail cell. It's in the door down there, and please lock him in there and then return to me. Mr. Doom Guy, please accompany Mr. Barr of Soap.
I will still fight you that protogens have mouth.
I don't care.
It's part of the transportation method.
Fair enough.
Oh god, I'm gonna throw up.
Very well. Other way, Mr. Barr of Soap. I don't think he knows where he's going.
It's still horrifying to look at, I'm gonna be honest.
Right, lawyers. Now that he's been... We'll try again. Order, order. Would the gentleman who just walked in please shut the door? Hello there and welcome to VR Court. Judge Ekron sitting to hear the crimes against Mr. Doom Guy. Mr. Doom Guy is accused of murdering a nun in a church. He has pled not guilty to this accusation, so we are proceeding on with a standard trial. The lawyers have already established their evidence, they have spoken to the witnesses, they have had the explanations, and we're ready to go. So, without further ado, and I appreciate everybody's patience, we're going to hand the floor over to Mr. Bird to make his opening statement first, as he is the more experienced lawyer. So, Mr. Bird, if you would please take to the floor, the opening statement is yours to make. Go ahead.
Well, my client over here is being accused of killing a nun. So, we have evidence, we have the murder weapon.
Boldly you said that.
We do have a blood sample of our client, or my client. But, the fact is, we have to take in the fact that he's been trapped in hell for the last 40,000 years. Killing a bunch of demons. I mean, I'd say that's reason enough, but I mean, we also don't know whether the nun is the nun from the horror movie, or just a regular nun itself. We could assume that the nun is from the horror movie, and that it is a demon, and that Doom Guy was simply doing what he was made to do.
Okay.
But then we could also assume that it's a human.
Okay,
That is my opening statement.
Thank you for your opening statement, Mr. Bird. A little bit rambly, but absolutely nothing wrong with that. Very good. Well, hello, Mr. Ravenclaw. If you'd be kind enough to take a seat, we'd appreciate that. I am now going to lend the floor to Mr. Nomad to make his opening statement for the prosecution. Mr. Nomad, if you'd be kind enough to make your opening statement for the prosecution.
Okay, so we know that the victim is a nun. So, like the defendant said, it might have been a demon or it might not. So, what? We have proof that would incriminate you into a murder of a very normal human person, which believes in God, and you just murdered him. So I'm going to try to show you are wrong, I guess.
Okay. Thank you for your opening statement, Mr. Nomad. Very good. So, there we go then. We have 2 opening statements from lawyers, 1 experienced and 1 new. And I must admit, I'm rather looking forward to this case. I know Crusade's heard me say that a million times, but this one particularly interests me because murder's always a fun thing. I notice that Mr. Bird has already turned his evidence television on, so we will hand the floor over to the defence to make their case first. Mr. Nomad, the floor is yours to present your case, although you may not question the witness at this moment in time. Mr. Bird, begin when you are ready.
As you can see, this here is a piece of candy. Now, we have 2 ways a defendant could have died. We have a murder weapon. Someone removed the 3rd evidence.
Would you like to go and replace it quickly?
But essentially, the murder weapon was a hammer.
Go and replace it.
Which, I'll just put...
Go and replace it quick. I didn't know that anybody had been in there. Nobody should have been in there.
Yeah. Oh shit, did I hit my guitar again? God fucking damn it.
Even I got a giggle out of that one. Thank you, Mr. Bird. I'm pleased to know that you play guitar, but what's the relevance of this hammer, old boy?
This is one of the murder weapons. We have 2 murder weapons that could have killed the nun. This, a hammer, or evidence number 1, a piece of candy that was tracked to have poison in it. Now, we could have seen that if this was a human nun, it would have easily died from the poison. But if it was demon, it would have not. However, that's when the
Well, he can find in a peace if he wants, but he's being found guilty. His inners will not find peace compared to what I'm going to fucking have done to them. Haven't figured out a death sentence. Right! Order. Order. At this point, I am calling an end to the recess. Everybody has returned from potty break, eating cat litter break, and physically dying. So we will carry on from this point. Mr. Doom Guy, it is very, Mr. Doom Guy, it is very poor procedure to swear at the judge. You must now insincerely apologise to me.
I'm sorry, I love you.
Very good. Thank you for your insincere apology. And with that in mind, we will now carry on with the case. Mr. Bird, would you please carry on from about 30 seconds where you stopped so Mr. Nomad is up to date? Court resumes.
Alright. So we were going over the possible murder weapons. And you know what I just realized after taking the biggest, best piss of my life? It says right here, I didn't eat this. That's a remark. Alright? So, none couldn't eat it, right? But then, on this murder weapon right here, where's the blood? Doom Guy does not kill with hammers. And if the nun didn't eat it, so how did she die? Rip and tear, Your Honor. Rip and tear.
Go ahead with your objection, Mr. Nomad.
Well, effectively, the nun did not die using this murder weapon you present as evidence, as the hammer, because he killed her with the foot of a demon. He ripped off a dead demon.
Okay, Mr. Nomad, do turn your television off, old boy. I accept your objection, but we'll keep that for your case if that's all right. Mr. Bird, your response to that?
Well, you see, Doom Guy, can you please shut the fuck up and stop that? You see, Doom Guy doesn't fucking beat nuns to death with a wooden leg. I don't think you've ever seen a weapon in a Doom Gay game that is a wooden leg.
Okay, there is
Your Honor, he is gay. He is gay. That's why he said he loved you.
Mr.
But,
Bird.
That's besides the point.
Mr. Bird, before you
Yes?
carry on, I am thinking of a number between 1 and 10. What number am I thinking of, Mr. Bird?
5.
Mr. Nomad, what number am I thinking of?
3.
Well, shit. Oh, God, you're both 1 away from the fucking number. It was 4. Right, okay, fine, coin toss. Right,
You could do a dick measuring.
No, because trust me, their penises will be massively compensated. Mr. Nomad, heads or tails?
Well, I leave him half head. He wanted head. I'll take head.
Okie dokie then. You may carry on with your case, Mr. Bird. I know what the murder weapon is. You don't.
So, as I was explaining, the wooden leg couldn't possibly be a murder weapon because it's not an actual weapon in any of the Doom games.
Don't cover that for the
However,
moment in time.
You can... Okay, alright.
Mr. Doom Guy, your seat, please.
Sorry, I'm moving shit in real life.
Okay.
Anyways, this is the diagram. This is the death. What are they called? What's it called? Fuck.
Death record?
It
Death
explains
certificate?
how the nun died.
Autopsy.
This is the death certificate. It's autopsy. Yes, that's what it was. Fuck.
You're welcome.
Basically, this is the autopsy. Thank you. Random person in the... Thank you, random citizen. Basically, this explained how the...
You're breathtaking.
This explained how the fucking nun died. This also revealed that the fact that the nun was in fact demon.
Mr. Bird, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. What number am I thinking of?
I'm rolling a dice.
6.
Carry on.
This explains that the nun was a demon. And in fact, if we explain the fact that Doom Guy was in hell for, you know, the 40,000 years he's been trapped there, trying to kill Satan and all. This would explain how the murder eventually happened. I mean, the nun is a demon and a famous horror movie icon. So, what does Doom Guy do? He does what he usually does. He fucking rips and tears away.
Okay, so just to get this quick, he killed the demon by tearing it apart, is that correct? Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Dice roll and all that shit. Carry on.
No, that's essentially... I rest my case.
Okay, thank you very much for your case, Mr. Bird. A particularly interesting one, I must admit. It went in a bit of a weird way, but plenty of rolls. In fact, I think we had more rolls in that one case than I've done in the past 3 or 4 cases I've done, so very good. If you'd be kind enough to turn your evidence TV off and take a seat, I am now going to lend the floor towards Mr. Nomad to present his counter case for the prosecution. Mr. Nomad, knowing that I know technically what the murder weapon is and the status of the dead, and you don't, just run with it, old boy, and do your best. The floor belongs to you, and we're not judging you. Well, I am, but they're not. And if they are, I'll kill them.
Thank you, Your Honor. That was
Scary.
that was scary. Yes. So, like I said, on my case, during the study of the case, we found out that the murder weapon was actually a demon legs brought up from the demon realm, and the nun was, forgive me for the language, bit the shit out of her with it. So, we also found in the emplacement of the death a banana, and someone wrote it. I did it. We found Mr. Doom Guy DNA on it. So. That moves us to the last part.
One
I
moment.
have a question. Your
Go
Honor.
ahead with your objection, Mr. Bird, rather. Apologies.
He said someone wrote that I did it next to the banana.
It's written on the
Where is
banana. It's physically written on the banana. You may proceed over
Can
and
we
look.
see
Walk over to the TV screen and have a look, old boy.
Oh, here it is.
It is actually written on there, to be fair. Not the objection I would have made,
Objection
but...
sustained, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Nomad, you may... Oh, gosh, I'm standing over it. You may carry on with your case.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, when the inspector just found the body, the nun was beyond recognizable. We found in a trash can not far away from the murder scene a gasoline can and some matchbox with some used matches. So we believe, since we found DNA on the matchbox and the banana, that Doom Guy was indeed in this place. So since the demon, the ripped demon leg was found out near the body, I think every evidence points to Mr. Doom Guy.
It's Gary's
What
mod.
exactly?
We don't
What
have.
exactly? What is exactly with the deal of the gasoline in the banana? What did
Mr.
Doom
Bird,
do with it?
you didn't follow the objection rules
Yes.
by pushing the button and waiting for my instructions. Therefore, your objection is overruled. Carry on, Mr. Nomad.
So, where was I? Yes, so, like I said before, the body was found out without recognition. It had been either burned out or someone passing by just decided to put fire on it. But the thing is, we found DNA on the matchbox. So,
Go ahead with your objection, Mr. Bird.
All right. Sorry, I didn't object earlier.
That's fine.
So you said that the body was burnt to a crisp, but here in the autopsy over in the evidence that I presented earlier, it says that it wasn't. In fact, it said it was a bloody mess, not burnt at all.
Mr. Nomad? I mean, you know this is going to end up being a coin toss, don't you, or a numbers game, again.
that is indeed weird.
Right. Once again, we must revert to blind luck because I can't make a fair call on this without fucking somebody's case up because these are obviously very critical details. Therefore, Mr. Nomad, heads or tails?
I'll take tails.
You might be interested to hear, Mr. Nomad, that I'm actually tossing an Empire of French 6 Semmers from 1864 from Napoleon III because I found it. I would like to point out now that I have read the autopsy, which is how I know the details and whether everything is true or not, and the body was indeed burnt to a crisp.
Your Honor, the witness is gone.
He
He isn't there.
Hopefully he will return. If not, then we guess either Crusade will do it or we have no witness. Crusade's quite good at jumping in and witnessing, but I'll have to speak to him first. Carry on with your case, Mr. Nomad.
Well, I've pretty much exposed everything I had.
Okay then. Well, if you're done, then thank you very much, Mr. Nomad. And thank you very much, lawyers, for your cases. 2 very well-presented cases that I have actually really bloody enjoyed listening to. And I have to remember all of the roles and who won what, which is a pain in the arse. But I more or less know the details, which I'm not going to tell you right now. Mr. Steves, I'm going to invite you to take a seat on my right-hand side, please.
Okay.
Don't panic. Now, Mr. Steve, before you can testify as a witness, you must do the Pledge of Honesty. It's very simple. You just have to repeat some phrases after me. Are you ready?
Sure.
I, leader of Steve's D9E8...
I, leader of Steve's D9E8,
promise to tell the truth,
promise to tell the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth,
and nothing but the truth,
lest the judge will tell my wife
lest the judge will tell my wife
the dirty underwear and secrets that I'm hiding from her,
the dirty underwear and the secrets that I'm hiding from her,
about that weird affair I was having at church.
about that weird affair I was having at church.
God save the Queen.
God save the Queen.
Very good. Thank you for your pledge of honesty. That totally wasn't a hint for the lawyers there. Right, as the witness has been sworn in. Trust me, it's not the worst I've done in the pledge of honesty. It's really not. I
very much hurt me.
lend the floor to Mr. Nomad to ask questions, and I invite him to come and stand in front to ask the questions.
I'm
although
pretty
you can
sure
sit
he
there
needs
if
a
you
quick
wish.
breather.
Yes. Well, the Pledge of Honesty can get a bit weird at times. We've had some really bad ones, trust me. That was actually very tame. That was tame! That was tame, man!
Lies.
Oh, you have no idea. Go ahead, Mr. Nomad, with your
I have
question.
no idea.
Your Honor. Leader Steve, E98.
Hello.
May I ask you, where were you during the murder time?
Well, I believe I was counting all the nuns to make sure that everyone was there at the day. Of course, there were some absent, but I had to be sure.
And does the victim was one of the missing ones?
Yes,
Or
they
was
were,
she there at that
unfortunately. No, she
Okay.
wasn't there. She was missing at that time.
So what time was it?
Fuck. Hold on, I completely forgot what nut times were. Hold on. I should have done my research for this. Hold on. Give me a quick minute.
You can just refuse to answer a
happening.
question if you want to.
And that is true, but I do like specifics.
Well, I ignore specifics. Wait, what?
Makes perfect sense.
You?
Appreciate it.
I'm going to assume he has this information written down somewhere.
This burger's good.
Option.
Bon appetit.
Fucking hell, Mr. Steve! Jesus Christ!
Medic?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. They hate it when I face the table.
Mr. Steve, if you approach me going in for a kiss like that again, I'm going to dismiss you as a witness. Please answer the question. Please answer the question, Mr. Steve. Witness questioning always takes the longest time in cases. Always. Mr. Steve, the question, please.
Especially when they fucking
You need me to repeat the question.
Yes, please repeat the question. I'm so sorry, Jenny. I'm sorry, I'm dying, please.
So, I was
I'm good,
asking,
I'm good, I'm good.
Ben Shapiro?
at what time happened the counting of the nun?
I'd say around 9:30.
Why?
Okay, good. So, did you knew the victim personally?
We talked on a daily basis about most times. It was mainly about how things were going over at where her place was, but other than that, everything was doing fine with her. And
Did you
I only
what
knew
she
her a
was
bit.
doing? Oh, sorry. Did you knew what she was doing on her free time? Maybe.
I only knew a little bit, but not much really. I always knew that she did tell me that on Wednesdays that she always went to the what was the name of that barista shop? Whatever the name was, she always went on there on Wednesdays. That's mostly what I know.
Okay, that might be all I had to ask.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nomad, if you'd be kind enough to take a seat. Mr. Bird, we'd like to cross-examine the witness. Please do come stand over here in roughly the same place as Mr. Nomad and begin your questioning. Mr. Nomad, you may object to questions as you see fit.
Hey, Anime Hill. I'm
That fucking smile! I walk over here, Your Honor, and he just fucking smiles with lights in his eyes. Yeah, okay.
Mr.
Alright.
Steves, you're not passing on the facade of a reliable
I'm
witness here,
sorry.
rather that of a complete fucking insane lad, and I kind of wish we had Crusade doing this. Calm your tits, chill yourself out, take it seriously, and remember your dirty washing.
Objection, Your Honor is pushing the witness.
Okay, carry on with your questioning, Mr. Bird.
Alright. Mr. Steves, do you know what the other witnesses, what the other nuns were doing at that time? You said a few were missing, and that's actually been
Yes.
bothering me. Okay, can you please tell the court what they were doing at that time?
Well, the ones that were missing, from what I can know, that most of them had a sick day that day, which we understand. One of them had to quickly water the flowers, so they had to excuse themselves, but the victim, they didn't arrive at all. But the other ones, they were either sick or had to quickly water the flowers.
So there was one that wasn't sick, to our understanding, that was outside watering flowers.
That is correct. Yes, that is correct.
Do you know if there were any kind of gas stations or anywhere to get a flammable substance near the church?
Not of my recollection. Sorry.
Did the nuns happen to have a way of transportation to getting to the church, or did they live at the church?
Some of them did live at the church, but there were a few that did have to drive here.
Was the one who watered the flowers one of those who had to drive?
Fortunately, yes. Well, she did refuse to live here. She did have a proper home where she was.
Your Honor, can I bring up an idea that's been striking at my head? I know it seems far-fetched.
I will allow it, but it may not lead anywhere, so go ahead, Mr. Bird.
I think, and I'm just thinking here, that since we know that there is one who was at the church that was not sick at all, she went outside, she had a car, she had a possible way to store gasoline. Could it be that that nun actually lit the body on fire?
Potentially, however, the evidence presented by the prosecution, which you didn't counter when the case was going on, does place your accused at the church itself, which is what you need to be focusing on, sort of explaining away at this point. It's possible that there was an accomplice in this particular case, but you didn't bring it up in your own case at the time, which doesn't lend it the most credence, if you will. However, it's an interesting thought for sure.
But the prosecution also said, Your Honor, that it could have been just anyone walking by who could have burned the body.
It's quite possible, but burning the body wasn't the cause of death. It was simply an after effect. Again, I've read the autopsy report.
I'm just thinking out loud here.
That's fair.
Do you know if that nun had any kind of accomplices or like any kind of motives to do something like pin a murder? Did she have any hate towards the witness that died, or did she have anything against Doom Guy over here? Did you know anything about that? Because you did say you talked to the witness, and that could be a plausible alibi. That could be very important to the case.
I suppose so. I'm not sure why she would have such a motive for such a thing. She did have a bit, only not much really, but the only time that she really disliked the Doom Guy was on very rare occasions when he had to visit the church. But other than that, I never really saw such a reason to commit such a crime.
Did she have any... Why did she have such a problem of Doom Guy visiting the church? I mean, let's be honest. If you're murdering demons for most of your life, you're gonna have to have some way to connect to God. So,
That
why
is
did she have
true.
such a problem with Doom Guy going into church?
Go ahead with your objection, Mr. Nomad.
I think maybe the nun had a problem with his attire, always wearing weapons. Splashed with blood.
I mean, the last time that he did enter the church, he was carrying a minigun on his back.
That is very interesting.
Might I say, there's the possibility we're getting a little bit distracted and you may potentially be taking away from the case that you've already presented, Mr. Bird, with your line of questioning.
Possibly. But
That's a
remember,
bone being
my
thrown to
case
you.
was... Remember, my case was that Doomguy did not do it at any cause, conceding from my weapons approach presented. So that was my whole case in a nutshell.
I
mean,
interpreted
and
it
if we're
differently,
saying-
but I'll allow you to carry on.
If we're saying that this person had such a grudge with Doomguy, therefore him walking into church with weapons is definitely something. Do you normally walk into churches with weapons, Doomguy?
I carry my weapons on me at all times.
And why do you have
I'm
the
at the
feel
gas station
to
with
need
a
that?
goddamn chainsaw.
Because at any moment a portal to hell could open, and I need to be the first at the front line.
Well, there we have a probable cause. Do you perhaps know any more nuns who would hypothetically dislike Doomguy for entering their secretarial realm?
Well, I'm not really sure. I mean, there could be, but I'm not sure. The only one that I've possibly seen with distaste was that one. Other than that, I don't think I've seen much.
Was the witness, or really this nun, presented with any medical issues, any psychological issues, any kind of trauma and whatnot?
Possibly not that she's spoken of, but I would assume that she's already cleared with those. But I am not sure.
Do you know her schedule at the time she would come to church?
Well, she's normally the one that arrives the more earliest ones. She's more early than the other ones. Of course, she's not the earliest, but she normally arrives quite early to the church.
Did she happen to talk to any of the other nuns? Happen to converse, make friends, anything like that?
Well, sometimes she would be a bit of a loner at times, but when the other nuns do approach her, she does seem to make the attempt to converse with them, yes.
This is turning out to be more interesting.
Mr. Doomguy, would you
Did-
put your
did-
right arm down, please? Thank you. Camera.
Any other evidence or anything that you knew about all the nuns, all the other nuns?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean. All the other nuns have been, well, of course, they arrive at the church bell. They always do what they're told, which is very generous of them. And while that one was a bit of a loner, she always got her things done. Even if she had a possible distaste for the Doom guy.
So we have a nun who had a distaste for the Doom guy. Was she actually friends with the witness? Did she speak to the witness often? Or I'm talking about the victim. I mean,
I believe so. I mean, the witness, or the victim, she always was the one to approach her first. She might have been one of her good friends, if I had to believe.
but did you see
that's
them
what I understand.
talk to each other, like, conversively?
Sometimes, only sometimes in the hallways when they had to water the plants or light the candles. But other than that, the witness, she didn't really talk much. And
Did the victim
the
have...
victim,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, mainly it was the victim that started the conversations with her.
Did the victim have a strict schedule as well?
At points, yes, but she did have free time, or sometime at some points in the day. She, of course, had free time like the others.
Did you notice anything off about the victim on the day of the murder?
I'm not sure what you're talking about. What do you mean, odd?
I mean, just a change in schedule. Because remember, you're the one who talked to her daily, so we'd have to ask you these questions to get to know more about the victim.
Well, I suppose there was a few days upcoming she had to quickly change. She didn't exactly elaborate on why. Something was happening at home, I believe, but I couldn't be sure.
Did the victim live
It was only
along
those
with
days.
the church?
Say that again?
Did the victim live along with the church?
Of course, she lived there, of course. She had to change something with her parents, I believe, but she didn't really elaborate much on it.
Could you think of any reason why she would have to change up with her parents? I mean, it seems completely fine for a nun to go to church. I don't see what kind of...
I'm not sure. It could be any reason. It could be anything with her parents. I'm not sure.
Did you know her parents very well?
At times we talked occasionally, I believe.
Did her parents really like you at all?
I suppose the mother did not like me as much. She was apparently a smoker.
Did the victim ever complain about her parents to you?
I don't believe she has. She might have in the convention booth, but I don't believe she normally complained about them. Other than the mother being a smoker, that's really all she complained about, if you'd call that complaining.
What about her father? Did she know her father well?
Her father was a very nice gentleman.
You wouldn't see anything out of the ordinary, like a possible
I don't
abuse.
think I would.
Hot Pockets. I don't want
I don't think I would. He even made hot chocolate for me.
So the mother smokes, and we could vote that as a possible reason, as parental disruption in a few weeks. Wait a second. In those few weeks,
Mr. Bird, I'm going to ask you
Yes.
to bring this questioning to a close shortly.
Finally.
all right. I have just
This
one
has
question
gone on
left.
for 20 minutes.
Go ahead with your question. I did say that witness questioning is always the thing that takes the longest, which is I try to keep witnesses to a minimum because it happens, and it's fine. But
No, the startup took
Yeah.
the longest.
But you have to get everything out, Your Honor.
you do,
And
but
I'm pretty sure you know this more than as well as I do. That you have to get as much details as you can.
I do,
because you can't
but I also know
necessarily
what
contact the dead.
details are relevant and which are not, especially when you've already presented a case. Because what you're currently doing is building a completely different case to the case that you've technically presented.
Thank God I'm not the only one that noticed that.
And that, I mentioned this earlier on when I said I was throwing you a bone, but you are kind of building a different case to what you presented in a way, and it's a bit kind of if that makes sense.
Far-fetched.
I'm trying to be nice to you here. I'm trying
He's
to throw
pretty
you a
sus.
bone, but you are kind of putting doubt into mind of your original story for me, even though I know what the autopsy says and I know how she died, exactly what weapon was used, and all those details. You're starting to throw into doubt the validity of the story you've given me already. Do you understand the point I'm making? I'm not trying to be a prick, but I find that although some details here are interesting, I find almost everything he said is technically irrelevant. Almost everything.
I'm so
Your
glad I'm
Honor,
not the
I
only
just
one
have
that
one
said-
thing to say. You said you were throwing me a bone, correct?
Yes.
Woof woof.
Sit the fuck down. Bloody parrot.
Snap my lawyer's neck.
Permission granted if he loses the case, Mr. Doomguy. Although, to be fair, if he loses, I know what your death sentence is, and we are going to go to a world and do it. So, yes, I've already decided that. But that's only if we lose. So, thank you for the witness questioning. I'm actually going to draw this witness questioning to a close, otherwise I do believe we will be here all day. I don't think we need to cross-examine Mr. Steves on anything he's said. I do believe that most of it is truthful. I'm surprised nobody picked up on the pledge of honesty and the fact that he was fucking the dead nun, but you didn't question it at the time, so that's not relevant.
I legit wanted to go there. I legit wanted to go up there and say, are you fucking a nun? Was the mom okay with it? Was the dad okay with
Order!
it?
Order! You have to pay attention to things when I'm talking like the Pledge of Honesty, because it did very openly say he was having an affair and all that shit in the church, so the implication was there, but
he gave you that hint.
yeah, that was the hint that I gave him that I didn't tell you. That was the bit I didn't tell you, but it doesn't matter.
Alright.
To be fair, if the defence had brought it up, he could have entirely thrown the witness out as completely biased, but it doesn't particularly matter. Thank you, Mr. Steves. If you'd be kind enough to piss off, I'd appreciate that.
That hurts my feelings.
I don't care about your fifis. Piss off.
He took it with him! He took the taser with him!
Well, he did throw it back, so... Mr. Bar of Soap, would you be kind enough to return the taser to my desk, please? Oh, it's okay, Mr. Nomad's done it. Thank you, Mr. Nomad.
Hot Pockets.
Right, that's fair enough. Order. So that is witness questioning, and a fairly interesting one for certain. I will not be putting amendments in, which is sometimes I do it in court, but I find they're very rarely used and very rarely accepted, so there will be no amendments. So now we're going to move on to the last facet of court that really requires the lawyers, which are the closing statements. A short and concise statement about your case. Basically, represent your case. You can change it a little bit with the evidence given, but just give a rough summary of your case as to why they are or are not guilty, and then it becomes my turn to talk again. Yay! But up until that point, I'm going to lend the floor to Mr. Nomad to make his closing statement first, as Mr. Bird made the opening statement first. So, Mr. Nomad, the floor for the last time belongs to you.
Okay, so
Oh, piss.
we're going to run quick over the last fact I've exposed. So with what we've got in the autopsy report presented to us, the body of the victim was returned burned. So that makes us back to this. Like, we've heard from the witness that some of the nuns have to take their cars, so they have access to gasoline. So maybe the gasoline wasn't his, but that doesn't explain the DNA, his DNA we found on the matchbox that turned on the fire. That's still pretty much incriminating, and I don't really know what to say else.
Okay. That's fine.
That still sticks to the story, I guess.
That's fine as a closing statement. You brought up an interesting fact there. The lawyer on the prosecution didn't question the evidence at the time, which we'll talk about on the debrief. I'll give you a rough idea of how things run. But thank you for your closing statement, Mr. Nomad. I am now going to lend the floor to Mr. Bird to make his closing statement to the court. So, Mr. Bird, for the last time, please spout some bullshit. I mean, legal facts.
That was funny.
Well, you see, Your Honor.
Channel.
Okay. All right. I don't know why I'm laughing. All right, Your Honor. I've come to my conclusion that my original case and the case that I was building during the testimony, I believe we both can agree those do not coincide. Those were complete bullshit.
Duh.
Go on.
You know that if you're agreeing with him, you're going to go to jail, right?
Go
But
on.
To be honest, I just want to kill
kind of
him.
noticed something. And, I kind of noticed something that, I mean, this should have been my original case from the start, but, you know, fuck me.
No thanks.
I feel like... Okay. Alright, okay. Wait, were you saying no thanks to my testimony or my
No, to
fucking
the fuck you.
fucking me?
I have a boyfriend. He
Oh.
wouldn't be happy. Now carry on.
Wait,
All
wouldn't
right.
be happy in the sense that you can't pleasure him? What?
No, if I fucked him, he wouldn't be very fucking happy, would he?
The fact that it wouldn't be illegal and that he is a literal court.
Order, order.
Judge.
We've got a little off track there. I apologise for joking around. Carry on, Mr. Bird.
All right, but my case, I think that someone framed Doom Guy. I think it might have been the judge, and I should have objected to this, but I believe you can't object to this, so I'm just gonna simply state it. You know how we found Doom Guy's DNA on the gasoline can? I
We
feel
didn't
like
found the gap.
No objections in closing statements.
Okay.
I feel like someone placed that. Because the prosecution has said that we found Doom Guy's DNA.
On the
I feel like
matchbox.
someone placed his DNA because he's always wearing that helmet, as he said during the trial. I'm always wearing my helmet, I'm always wearing my guns, don't know when a portal could pop up. Kill me. I feel like someone framed Doom Guy, and I think it was that nun that was watering the flowers. Ugh. Yes, because I clearly flower my water.
Well, you know.
That is my closing statement, Your Honor, and I'm sorry that I've changed up my testimony.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bird. It wouldn't be the first time I've seen an entire testimony and case change on a whim. This is actually where amendments would have come in, but we didn't do them. So, thank you, lawyers, very much for your cases. I've genuinely enjoyed it, even though it has gone a little bit woo, if you will. So now, the lawyers are technically done with their explanations, because we're going to move on to the judge's summary. This is where I talk about the case as I have interpreted it. So I will basically ask you to bring the evidence up in the order you did so, and I will talk about it. I may ask the lawyers to reiterate points that they brought up if I've forgotten them, and this is also where you find out the results of rolls. So here we go. We're going to start with the prosecution case, since that's who we begun with. So, Mr. Bird, if you'll be kind enough to please bring up the first piece of evidence that you presented to the court. And turn your television on as well, old boy.
Oh, sorry. Sorry,
That's
my
fine.
fucking VR shit.
It's fine, Mr. Bird. So it's a slightly awkward placement.
There's the first evidence.
Television on for me as well, old boy. Okay, so the first piece of evidence was a piece of candy that was found at the scene. Now, it has some particularly interesting writing on it saying, "I did not eat this." The lawyer presided that this piece of candy was most likely poisoned and was found at the scene. If you could move to the second piece of evidence, please, Mr. Bird.
In the way I presented...
Mr. Bird, this is where I'm talking, not you.
Yeah, shut the fuck up.
I know.
So the second piece of evidence, which appears to have disappeared, it was a hammer. Now, it is alleged that this hammer may have been a murder weapon. However, as you said, the candy was a murder weapon as well, and therefore, technically, neither of these items were murder weapons, because Mr. Doom Guy tore apart the demon with his bare hands, as that is the way of the Doom Guy. That's how he kills things. And I think we go to evidence number C, Mr. Bird. Evidence number C, please. Evidence number C. Evidence number C was, I don't know if it's actually on there, was the autopsy, which is apparently top secret for reasons we don't understand, but you've got to use documents in the way they've gone, and we allow this believability in court. This autopsy had plenty of information, however, Mr. Bird was slightly confused in a few aspects. We couldn't tell if the corpse was bloody when it was found, because it was burned to a crisp, as Mr. Nomad pointed out. However, the nun did die from being beaten to death with her own leg. Yes. The murder weapon was, as Mr. Nomad pointed out, the leg of the nun herself, which is quite an interesting twist, because basically you both won roles that made this practically impossible for me to do anything else. So, she was beaten to death with her own leg, which would fit in with being torn apart, indicating she was still alive when the leg was torn off and used to beat her over the head and various other body parts. Now, Mr. Bird's case, we've strayed a little bit from your case, but the general gist was that it couldn't have been Doom Guy because he wouldn't murder using a hammer or a poisoned piece of candy, which was allegedly the murder weapon, but then she was found beaten to death as well, and it all got a little bit complicated. But that was the case as I prescribed from the defence. If we move on now over to the prosecution, Mr. Nomad, if you could bring up your first piece of evidence, please. What is it, the leg? I know it's the first piece you reference as an objection, but the first piece of evidence was the leg used to beat the victim to death, and this was physically the item used to beat her to death, which is her own leg. Now, an interesting point I didn't point out was the prosecution that she was a demon. This was a demon leg that was used to beat her to death, hence why she was able to survive having the leg torn off. That was a role I admit I forgot, but I just remembered. Which is how she was able to survive long enough having her leg ripped off to then be beaten to death with the leg. The second piece of evidence, if you would please, Mr. Nomad. Now on here we had a rather weird murder's confession, which allegedly had DNA from the accused, fingerprints. This was never questioned by Mr. Bird, which, as we don't have a fingerprint scanner in this room, would have been a coin toss. So we had to take the prosecution's word that the DNA and fingerprints found belonged to Mr. Doomguy, even though it could have been very easily disproven by saying he's wearing a pair of gloves. But once again, this is something the defense rather failed to pick up on. Written on the banana are the words, "I did it," believably done by Mr. Doomguy in a scrawl that you would expect from somebody who's been fighting demons for a very, very long time. We can assume that Mr. Doomguy probably enjoys a good banana once in a while, having been in hell for so long. You can only eat rocks for so long before you want a nice, juicy banana. Next piece of evidence, please, Mr. Nomad. And the third piece of evidence was a gasoline can and a matchbox with matches. The DNA of Mr. Doomguy, once again this was not questioned by the defense, was found on the matchbox, and this was used to burn the nun's body to a crisp. That crisp being reported in the autopsy, which of course was the only role result I actually told you at the time. Now, there was some confusion with the witness questioning as to the actual source of this gas can. It may have come from the nun who drove, it may have come from pretty much anywhere. It was rather unclear, but the source of the gas itself is somewhat irrelevant, as it would simply place, if we went to say it was the nun's gas, the fact that her vehicle was there at the scene at the time, which isn't really an important factor. But once again, as the DNA of Mr. Doomguy was found on it, and she was burnt to a crisp, it is logical to conclude that he had a role to play. Now, as I mentioned, we know that the witness, Mr. Steves, was indeed having a bit of bum fun with the nun, which was of course quite bad. I know the parents were brought up here, which may lead to the general distaste of the parents towards him and everything else along these lines, but I didn't find anything the witness said really massively important outside of the fact that allegedly there were more nuns around. Some were off, but some were around, but then they weren't around, and then nobody was there, but Mr. Steves was there, and nobody questioned why he was there and what he actually saw of the murder, because he was there at the time, because he was waiting to fuck her, but it didn't happen, and, you know, a bit of a cock-up there on the questioning, but it's fine. We all learn really stupid things, and it's fine. And as far as I care, that brings the cases as presented to a close, so the lawyers may turn their televisions off, and we will proceed on now with the judgment. Rather short judge's summary, if you ask me. I do hope the lawyers aren't too pissed at the way I've interpreted their cases. I assume Mr. Bird probably is, but that's the way that I've done it. At the end of the day, it's what I think. Jury cases are fantastic because it's what the jury thinks, and they really throw bones at you. But yes, the evidence presented is quite strong on one way, especially as it correlates with the evidence of the other case. In fact, I find that the evidence of the prosecution correlates quite nicely to some of the things that the defense has brought up. I do believe, as it wasn't questioned, the banana was at least in the possession of Mr. Doomguy, which would most likely place him at the scene, and that the matchbox, which was found at the scene, was also in his possession. Yes, he goes to church, but I have the feeling that the guy who spends so long in hell is very unlikely to lose important objects like that on a whim. It is also very much like Mr. Doomguy, having found out the nun was a demon, to tear her astray, and then use her own limb, preferably her leg, to beat her to death. And although killing a demon in hell is not a crime, in this realm of existence, whales are fucking judges, and therefore the crime is technically illegal. Now, if the defense had said she was a demon and demons are not covered under the law as murder witnesses, or suspects or whatever, it might have been a far more interesting case of trying to prove that this was actually an illegal act rather than a legal one. But as it wasn't brought up, I must, in the long run, yes, he is a demon, and yes, he is allowed in this courtroom, Mr. Doom Guy. We don't discriminate against demons here. He's being a good little demon. Yes, no, he cleans the floor. He cleans the floor, Mr. Doom Guy. Don't look at me like that. Anyway, I'm going to blue screen now. Based on the cases that have been presented to me, my interpretation, the witness questioning, and the evidence, I must rule that Mr. Doom Guy, although if he had been in hell, would not be guilty of the crime, as he is on the realm of VRchat, is guilty of the crime of brutally murdering a demonic nun, there's an oxymoron for you, using her own limbs and burning the body in an attempt to hide the evidence, and therefore I sentence him to death by firing squad. It appears... Mr. Bar of Soap, please escort Mr. Doom Guy to the jail cell.
Wait. May I have one?
Yes,
may I
Your
say
Honor.
one thing?
You may say
May I
one
say
thing
one
before
thing?
you're escorted away, Mr. Doom Guy.
Alright. I killed the demon, yes. I did not know it was illegal to kill demons in this world. But, I'm gonna be nice, even though I could easily break out of jail. Easily. But, if I stay away, demons like that will infiltrate this world, colonize it, and turn it into their own, making your souls into Argent energy. You will be turned into nothing but power. You missed.
Let me see, I want to.
Send him to the jail
And-
cells.
Dude, I have the spoon.
Mr. Steve, I'm afraid the bar... Mr. Steve, that's entirely unrepresented. Please send Mr. Doom Guy to the jail cell.
Give it to me. I want to do it myself.
Your Honor, he just came.
Very well. Right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this. We shall now proceed to a world where the execution will take place. Everybody will be the firing squad. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us at this execution. Mr. Doom Guy, as you know, has been found guilty of murdering, and that makes him a bastard, and therefore we are going to execute him. On the count of 3, you will all open fire on the count of 3 at the target until he is dead. Please don't kill each other until at least 10 seconds has passed. Before we go, Mr. Doom Guy, do you have any final words?
My broken fingers. my middle finger's broken.
What fantastic final words for such a brave warrior. Oh, Mr. Bird.
Can I say one thing to my client real quick?
Mr. Bird, you may say one thing to your client very quickly.
See you in hell, motherfucker.
Come at me, bitches!
Mr. Bird, would you like to join the firing squad? Don't shoot yet, Mr. Bird.
Yes, please.
Come here and take this firearm. This firearm here,
Okie dokie.
if you can handle it.
We're just waiting
Oh,
for
that's
the
it.
guns ready to
Alright.
roll.
Right, ladies and gentlemen,
Fucking along.
Your Honor.
thank you very much.
Lawyer has turned against you.
Ladies and gentlemen, don't shoot him yet, you silly bastard.
I'm not.
Right,
Kill you if you don't kill me.
right, on the count of 3, but... Ready? Well, we'll do ready, aim, fire. So, ready,
I'm gonna charge at you when you do it.
aim, fire!
Fuck boy. Holy shit.
I swear to God. Kill me or I'll kill you if you don't kill me.